Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I promise I will not be long. I want first of all to compliment the Minister for Tourism for his stewardship so far, Mr. Speaker. And to, sometimes I tease him and on the staff that he has. He says he only has 7 tourism officers, Mr. Speaker. If, when I was Minister for Tourism, I had a lot less than 7. But at that time, as one and two. There was 2. And one of them are still in the ministry as we speak, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, at that time they worked hard, and now I am sure they are working just as hard, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that tourism does what it does with commission. So I want to thank them for their work to improve the tourism industry, Mr. Speaker. And I want to warn them that I need more money for my budget. So they have to deliver so that I can get some more revenue. Mr. Speaker, I'm very grateful to them, very grateful to the Minister and the people in the Solution Tourism Authority for their commitment to the industry, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wanted this morning to go back a little into how we got where we got, and what was the philosophical underpinning as to why we got here. But Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition does not allow me to do that without I having to correct him. I want to use the word correct, Mr. Speaker. I'm in an independent mood today. I'm celebrating independence. So I'm going to use the word correct him, Mr. Speaker, on some of the things that he said. Mr. Speaker, he says that there is no schedule for tourism incentives, Mr. Speaker. And he says that nowhere in the bill does the bill say what incentives we are giving the tourism industry. Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition, let me remind him, schedule number 2, incentives, additional incentives and incentives for resilience. Part A, incentives for tourism investment, corporate tax, income tax with regard to a registered business, import duty on imports of building materials, equipment, furniture, fixtures and fittings, import duty and excise tax on articles for marketing and branding, excise tax, stamp duty and vendors tax on the conveyance or transfer on sale of immovable property on the initial transfer, property tax, value-added tax on buildings, materials, equipment, furniture, fixtures and fittings, withholding tax, tax credit for financial institutions, marketing support, customer service training and capacity building, registration of business names and fees, work permit fees, alien landholding license fees. Part B, incentives for a tourism investment specialized support, digitalization, import duty and excise tax on equipment, withholding tax. B, low carbon and resource use, corporate tax, import duty and excise tax on equipment for low carbon and resource use, withholding tax. Part C, additional incentives, corporate tax, property tax, income tax, vendors tax, withholding tax, stamp duty. Part D, incentives for resilience, a word that he doesn't like at all. He says the Norwegians are not resilient. You see, you don't make a joke and talk about resilience. But we have incentives for resilience, Mr. Speaker. Incentives specified under Part A, value-added tax services, registration licensing fees for tourism transportation, grant funding, customer service charge, stamp duty on mortgages and loans, tourism certification fees, contract tax, corporation tax credit for employee retention. Schedule 3, tourism sectors, tourism accommodation, food and beverage, tourism transportation, recreation, meetings, incentives, conferences, and event planners, tourism facilitation services and travel trade, tourism niche markets, and specialized support areas. Mr. Speaker, these...
Member for Miku South.
Mr. Speaker, the member is misrepresenting what I said. I said that there are no specific...
Member for Miku South.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Are you standing on a point of order?
I am, Mr. Speaker.
Anyway, what is the point of order?
That the member is misrepresenting the words that I said, Mr. Speaker. Okay? I said that there are no specificity to any of the incentives.
There is no
Specificity. No specifics to the incentives. Those are just general heads. When you go to the Incentive Act, Mr. Speaker, you'll see that it says if you have 20 rooms, then you will get a 15-year tax holiday, etc. Where are the regulations? You said you suspended the... Mr. Speaker, the member said in the bill in the last part that he has suspended the act. So where is it? It says it in the back of it. You want me to read it for you?
Okay, I'll explain to you.
Okay, because I'm not seeing any of it. I don't see any of those specifics, right? That will tell anybody where the incentives are and how much it is.
The member for Miku South is on his feet. Member for Castries South, and you'll allow him to proceed accordingly. Thank you. Go ahead, member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. All I'm saying is that that's why I made the reference. It's like we're going to stick the file into a hole, and that whatever comes out, we don't know. We don't know what the expectation is. So when the member said that he's only going to give up to a 50% tax holiday, where is that written? That's not written anywhere. There's nothing in the bill. And I'm saying to you, it's a dangerous precedent to establish, because if you're suspending the act, you would be suspending the schedule as well. So what is it that what can people realistically expect to get when they apply for the incentives? Yes, I know all the headings are there. Those have always existed.
Member.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker,
go ahead, member from Castries East.
I'm sure, Mr. Speaker, and if I made a mistake, what he doesn't like to say, I'll admit. I'm sure I heard him say there is no schedule. I'm sure I heard so. I'm sure I heard him say there is no schedule. But, Mr. Speaker, I'm sure. Anyway, Mr. Speaker, but I just want to inform, Mr. Speaker, the investment community that this government, Mr. Speaker, intends to continue the incentive regime. We will continue the incentive regime, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, speaking about the history of tourism.
Member for Castries East, hold on. Member for Castries East, hold on. Member for Miku South and member for Castries South. The member for Castries East is on his feet, and I would appreciate if you would allow the member to be heard in silence. Go ahead, member for Castries East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If the member for Miku South wants to go down memory lane as far as tourism is concerned, Mr. Speaker, he would agree, Mr. Speaker, that the government of the Labour Party has done the most effective, the most practical, and the most result-oriented initiatives for the tourism industry. Mr. Speaker, a few, Hotel Chocolat. Hotel Chocolat, Mr. Speaker, speaking about soufre and development and incentives and creating linkages, was a creation of the then Minister of Agriculture and the Minister of Tourism. Hotel Chocolat. At the time, Mr. Speaker, I remember one of their strongest supporters on the radio were actually ridiculing the Hotel Chocolat issue. Ridiculing, Mr. Speaker, as usual. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, music and causing music to be part of the tourism industry. Again, it was the Labour Party government through the National Development Corporation that gave musicians equipment free, engineering equipment to upgrade their music to integrate music with the tourism industry, Mr. Speaker. Again, it was the layout. I just want to go down memory lane a little, Mr. Speaker, because when you listen to some things that some people say, particularly younger people who really do not know or haven't learned or haven't been told the history of St. Lucia, you would believe, Mr. Speaker, that the only thing that ever happened in the tourism industry was between 2016 and 2011. You would believe that there was nothing there, Mr. Speaker, and it came this great visionary to transform the tourism industry. But that's not true, Mr. Speaker. That's not true. Many things happen in the industry. The philosophical underpinning of the industry, Mr. Speaker. After 9/11, it was our government that passed the tourism incentives, the additional tourism stimulus act. The Tourism Stimulus Act, Mr. Speaker. We said that, listen, the industry had got hit by 9/11, and there was need to increase the incentive package for investment in industry. And it was this government, and I recall specifically again, we were criticized when we did that, Mr. Speaker, because at the time we were saying that you must create more incentives. So the history of incentives, Mr. Speaker, is clear. We were the ones to give incentives to taxi drivers. You may recall, Mr. Speaker, when we saw the benefits of tourism again, we said that the taxi driving industry must be regularized, Mr. Speaker. We had a training program for taxi drivers, and we brought the TX split that caused that, and we gave them incentives, Mr. Speaker, so much so that taxi drivers were able to upgrade their fleet to give the industry a higher level of transportation. That was done by our government, Mr. Speaker. Now the Ministry of Tourism is reviving it, revising it, making it better. That's how it ought to work. You got to start from a foundation and make it better, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the member speaks about cruise tourism and shopping. Cruise tourism and shopping. But when this government goes into a PPP with GPH, something that he started and did not continue, Mr. Speaker, he goes all over the place. And you see, Mr. Speaker, this world is a very small world. He goes all over the place, Mr. Speaker, and he says the most outrageous things about St. Lucia, about the government, about the Minister of Tourism, about the Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, and comes to this honorable house and pretends, Mr. Speaker. But he's the one who is trying his best for GPH not to invest in this country, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, he speaks about cruise tourism and speaks about a PPP. The same thing, Mr. Speaker. He's speaking on both sides of his tongue, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the minister speaks about the brand name tequila, and he made a reference to a conversation he and I had. When you used to have conversations, Mr. Speaker, I remember very, very clearly a conversation we had in Puerto Rico when he was drinking tequila. But, Mr. Speaker, I will not disclose the content of this conversation. I will not. I am above that. I'm not going to disclose. But I remember that conversation very clearly, Mr. Speaker. He was drinking tequila. He was drinking either tequila or Bacardi, one of them. And I remember he had his steak raw. He had his steak raw. And that was the first time I saw a steak with blood. I saw him eating it. I'd never seen that before. I remember that clearly. I said to him, boy, I don't know, you eating that? You know, he had a steak with blood. Two of us today. But we're not going through that conversation, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, that's in the book. So, Mr. Speaker, the member must not try to revisionist history, Mr. Speaker. But, you know, we're not going there. It's independence. Mr. Speaker, the member speaks about the conversation again we had about Marchand. But as the same member, when I tried to bring jazz to the people in Marchand, he criticized me. And then to add insult to injury, he said people should go and demonstrate in Marshall. That's what he said. He said, let them go and demonstrate in Marshall, Mr. Speaker. But the same minister comes there and speaks about being inclusive, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to say to the people of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker, that the tourism industry is extremely important to the well-being of this country. And when I made a statement that after COVID, my realization of the importance of the industry increased. As usual, they tried to make a whole story for Mr. Speaker. I repeat it again, Mr. Speaker. And that is why I want to applaud the Minister for Tourism for bringing such an inclusive bill, Mr. Speaker. If you look at it, you will see that there is something in this bill for everyone, Mr. Speaker. It's a continuation of a philosophical underpinning to the tourism industry. That's what it is, Mr. Speaker. It's a continuation to the Nature Heritage Tourism Program. It's a continuation to the opening of that gate to bring, and again, Mr. Speaker, when that happened, this short-sightedness. And you know, yesterday I said to the press, when I get criticized or people try to misinterpret what I say or misinform, it does nothing to me. Absolutely nothing, Mr. Speaker. Because all my life I've remained focused on a goal. This all my life, Mr. Speaker, I remain focused. And if I did not remain focused, if I'd listened to the naysayers and the prophets of doom and gloom and the agents of misinformation, Mr. Speaker, with the help of the people of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker, and the members of the St. Lucia Labour Party, I would never have been Prime Minister of this country. But, Mr. Speaker, I always remain focused. And this is why I will work with the Minister of Tourism. I will work with the partners in the tourism industry, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that this industry lives to its full potential, Mr. Speaker, and creates the benefits for people of this country. Mr. Speaker, again, looking at history and facts. I mean, I said today is not a day for that, but I have to do it. The member for Miku South said he built a hotel in Rodney. He did not. No. He expanded on an existing hotel in Rodney Music. The hotel that he bought, and if you haven't removed it, my name is supposed to still at the hotel, you know. It's still there? What? My name was opened by the Honorable Philp J. Pierre. What he got, Mr. Speaker, was a hotel called Candio Inn. And then Candio Inn was, I don't want to get involved in who. Candio Inn, Mr. Speaker, then it changed to Coke. And then there was Islander Hotel, a fellow called American Drywall, and a guy called Glass, with the owners of and that was destroyed. It was broken down, Mr. Speaker, and then they expanded. But the fact is, Mr. Speaker, the member but Island was destroyed. Okay, fine. Okay, agree. Okay. All right. But the point is, Mr. Speaker, that there was already a hotel there. He didn't build a hotel in Rodney. Just to make the history a little clearer, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, talking about airlines again, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. The Minister for Tourism. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Tourism, I want to say he made an error, Mr. Speaker. He said that the Tourism Advisory Committee was formed by this government. But that's not true. That is inaccurate, Mr. Speaker. The TAC existed before. It was headed by a fellow called Noel Kadas, and was a member of the TAC, Mr. Speaker. You see, I don't like to talk and boast and pretend things. Mr. Speaker, there are many things that happen in this country, Mr. Speaker. If I really have to explain what happened, Mr. Speaker, the truth will come to light. But I allow people to speak and write and but Mr. Speaker, the real truth, the truth, one day the truth will be revealed, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to end talking about social partnerships. It's extremely important, Mr. Speaker, that we understand what happens to families because of some aspects of the tourism industry. Very important, Mr. Speaker. It's very important. Last week in this Honorable House, I spoke about the shift system in schools, where children used to have to spend half day in schools, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, and I'm very happy that there'll be increased incentives for hotels who show that social consciousness. Look at a family, a new family, a modern family, Mr. Speaker, where both parents work in an hotel. Both parents work in a hotel, Mr. Speaker. You find that many times, Mr. Speaker, the children are unsupervised because their parents are at work. And when a social partnership is created, where the hotels, and I want to congratulate Sanders for their move, Mr. Speaker, where the hotels can find a way to cause that dislocation that may arise from families being away from each other, or parents being away from their children because of the employment in industry, Mr. Speaker, it must be applauded. And any move that will increase the level of incentives for hotels to expand or improve that social partnership, Mr. must be complemented, Mr. Speaker, because the foundation of the country, Mr. Speaker, the foundation of any country is in its families and is what happens at the home, Mr. Speaker. So I commend the social partnership idea, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, recently, St. Lucia has experienced some level of gun violence, an increase of gun violence, Mr. Speaker. And in the interest of St. Lucia, and in the interest of those who pretend to love St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker, let us not sensationalize this gun violence that exists in this country. You heard this morning the opposition almost gloating that an advisory had been placed on St. Lucia by Canada, which is gloating that an advisory had been placed on St. Lucia by Canada. Almost gloating, Mr. Speaker. Last week, they were predicting that what happened in 2 other Caribbean islands will happen in St. Lucia very soon, Mr. Speaker. Gloating, actually wishing that bad befall on this country because they are not the ones who are administering this country, Mr. Speaker. I want to implore, I want to tell Mr. Speaker, stop it. It does not augur well for the country. It doesn't augur well for the tourism industry, Mr. Speaker, and there is nothing to be gained, Mr. Speaker, by promoting that kind of behavior for cheap political motives, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the matter of small hotels, Mr. Speaker, and I recall when I was Minister of Tourism, we were promoting something called STEP. Not the STEP you know, a STEP, Mr. Speaker, to encourage to market small hotels collectively. And I'm sure, Mr. Speaker, that in the community tourism project, Mr. Speaker, there is, and I'm sure the minister will expand, Mr. Speaker, there is initiatives for joint marketing of the small hotels in this country. And again, revisionist history, Mr. Speaker, The member from Mico South speaks about local hotels that have failed, Mr. Speaker. But some of the most successful hotel properties in this country are owned by locals. Bay Gardens, Le Sport, Coco Palm, Hummingbird are owned by locals. There is a basic reason why some hotels, some local hotels did not survive. But to paint a brush as if local hotels do not survive and local hotels fail is not accurate, and I think we should desist from that practice, Mr. Speaker. We must encourage local people to go into hotels. We must help them, Mr. Speaker. We must promote them. We must help them. We must give them incentives that are real. And that is why I read the schedule of incentives that are available for the hotel industry, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I promise I will not be long, but I really want to say I give my full approval, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, this bill was, again, because of our style, this bill was circulated to the public before it came to the cabinet, right or wrong? Yes, it was circulated for discussion, long discussion before it came to the cabinet, just like the tax bill. That's our style. We let it allow it to be discussed on the outside before it comes to the cabinet. This tourism bill was a bill that was discussed with all stakeholders, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, the minister will clarify the 50% he spoke of. The minister said that you will start with 50%. He never said it is limited to 50%. He said you will start. You will start with 50% and then it will increase, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know, sometimes it baffles me, Mr. Speaker. Why can people deliberately misinform? Deliberately misinform, Mr. Speaker. And even in the face of reality and the truth, Mr. Speaker, there is still misinformation. Fact is, St. Lucia's tourism industry has progressed rapidly and is continuing to progress, Mr. Speaker. Both in terms of tourism arrivals, and there must be a metric to measure. There must be a metric. And the metric that we use now is arrivals, and the expansion of that metric is the TSA. The tourism satellite accounting. Tourism satellite accounting, Mr. Speaker, started when I was Minister of Tourism. It was something by the World Tourism Council, ZWTC, that decided that, listen to me, the tourism industry impacted on many aspects of the country, and we had to put it together, and the traditional national income accounting would not account for the impact of tourism, Mr. Speaker. So nothing really to believe it's some guru that invented it, Mr. Speaker. Just like right now we're speaking about a vulnerability index, because all these countries are called middle income countries, and we're saying that the level of their vulnerability is so high because of hurricanes and climate change that you have to use a different metrics to measure their ability to get aid, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, fact is, arrivals are one metric by which you measure, but there are other areas by which you measure, Mr. Speaker. There are other areas. So we have to talk about the arrivals. We have to speak about the increase in arrivals, but we also have to ensure, as we are doing with the tourism incentives and the expansion of the industry and the Airbnb industry, Mr. Speaker, that people benefit from the industry. So I want to align myself with this bill. I want to align myself with a philosophical approach that this government and the ministry is taking for the industry. I want to align myself with that, Mr. Speaker. I think it's novel, Mr. Speaker, and to say it's a good initial try, Mr. Speaker, is an understatement. But that is what the opposition is about. always denigrating something, Mr. Speaker, always finding ways and means to get personal, Mr. Speaker. But I align myself, I support the Tourism Development Act, Mr. Speaker, and I know when the regulations are tabled and we read the regulations, we'll find answers, or we'll find the answers to what appears in the members of Migo South's eyes to be inconsistencies, Mr. Speaker. I support this bill. I applaud the Minister of Tourism and his staff, Mr. Speaker, and I look forward to the continued expansion of the industry to benefit the people of St. Lucia, to benefit the people of St. Lucia. And I make no apologies for saying that the people of St. Lucia must benefit, the workers in the hotel industry. And that is why one of my first actions with the help of the Prime Minister was to remove service charge on tips paid in the hotel. We removed taxes on service charge and tips paid in the hotel. It's a deep philosophical belief that I have that the greatest industry or the largest industry in the country must benefit the people of this country. And no one, in spite of all the misinformation, the jabs and things, can tell me that the people of this country, if they do not benefit from the industry, if they are not paid proper wages, if they are not given proper working conditions, if they are not taught to sell the industry, no matter how much money you spend on marketing, Mr. Speaker, if you keep the people out, if you ostracize them, if they believe that this thing is not for them, Mr. Speaker, the industry will not serve its purpose, which is, one, to create a better quality of life, and two, to profit, let the investors profit from the industry. The people who invest in the industry at all levels must profit from it. They must make money for the investment. Even though, as a member for Castries South East said, and I wasn't there when that happened, and I hope he speaks the truth, that we were he spoke the truth, that we were denigrated for none of us having to run our own businesses. Is that happened for you? I was out by the Mr. Speaker, but that shows where we are, Mr. Speaker.
Back after lunch.
That shows, Mr. Speaker, where we are. That shows, Mr. Speaker, where we are. That shows our mentality, Mr. Speaker. But that is not altogether true, because many of us had run our own businesses. The member for Soufre run her own business, Mr. Speaker. And, just to end, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, there is really a philosophical difference in this government, Mr. Speaker. I heard the member for Castries North say when he was a young man, he sold trinkets to tourists by the month. You want to go ahead? The month lay by, Mr. Speaker. And this is the humility and the philosophical difference, Mr. Speaker. And I want young people, Mr. Speaker, to understand that. That is why, Mr. Speaker, we are promoting the youth economy. For that reason, that's why we're promoting the economy. For people like him, instead of they being attacked for saying that never run any business, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, no member in this honorable house ever says that they run a business or they are businessmen or they run government like a business. You know what you say? We say we run government for people. That's what we say. Not as a business. We run government for people, Mr. Speaker. And that is why we need the tourism industry, Mr. Speaker, to develop our people. Because it's through the tourism industry we are going to be able to finance one university graduate for every household. And it's through the tourism industry, Mr. Speaker, we are going to be able to create sportsmen and women like Julian Alfred, Dan Sammy, etc. It's for the industry.
Universal healthcare.
That is why, Mr. Speaker, it's through the industry, Mr. Speaker, we are going to continue and fund universal health care, Mr. Speaker. And it's through the industry, Mr. Speaker, we can remove VAT on building materials so ordinary, regular people can get a proper quality of life. That's what the industry does to us. That's what the industry is doing for us, Mr. Speaker. And we make no bones about it. The industry must benefit the people of St. Lucia, but the people, I want to repeat myself. But the people who invest must make money. The people must. So when they go all over the country and say that the Labour Party is anti-business, Mr. Speaker, I want to make it clear to the investment community out there that we believe you must make money. You must make money. The return on your investment must be as high as possible, but you cannot do it on the backs of the people of St. Lucia. But the people of St. Lucia must benefit also, so they can improve their quality of life and the standard of living, Mr. Speaker. That's our philosophical position, and that's the position we'll stand by, and that is the position that this government will pursue. And that is why we think that the tourism industry must be given all the support, because we believe that the linkages that can come out of the industry, if they are properly nurtured, Mr. Speaker, can improve the quality of life for all the people of this country. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.